Hello, I'm wearing my bright jacket today, and that is a clue to who this month's story is about. Can you remember back in September at Messy Church, the theme was Abraham? Do you remember the story I told? One night when Abraham went out and looked up at the sky, he saw all the stars, and God said to him, "You're going to have as many descendants as there are stars in the sky one day." Well, this was amazing because at that time, Abraham was getting on in years and he hadn't got any children. But he eventually had a son called Isaac, who had two sons, Esau and Jacob. And Jacob had 12 sons. And this story is about one of those sons. And my coat is a clue. Guess? Yeah, Joseph. Joseph was a great-great-grandson of Abraham. And he had 11 brothers, one younger one and 10 older ones. What do you think it would be like to have 11 brothers? Well, Joseph's older brothers had the same dad as him, but different mums. And they never really got on. And this was partly because Joseph was Jacob's favourite son and he favoured him. For example, he sent Joseph out to check on the other brothers to see if they were doing their work and to come back and let him know. How would you feel if your brother or sister told your mum and dad what you were up to all the time? And the other thing Jacob did was give Joseph a special coat. It was a long coat with colours in it. And it was really saying that you're special, you're important. How do you think his brothers felt about that? How would you feel? Yeah, they felt angry and jealous and they wanted to get their own back. Joseph also had dreams that made his brothers more angry. It wasn't that he had dreams, but that he boasted about them. He told them, which he probably shouldn't have done. Two of his dreams was that him and his brothers each had sheaves of wheat, and the 11 brothers' sheaves were bowing down to his. Another dream, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to Joseph. So he was really saying that he was more important than them, that he was going to be in charge in the future. How would you feel if your younger brother or sister said to you that one day they were going to be in charge and boss you about? Well, Joseph's brothers weren't happy about it. Well, one day, by this time Joseph was 17, Jacob sent him off to see his brothers, to visit them, to check on what they're doing and let him know, and also take them some food. His brothers were shepherds and they were looking after the sheep some miles away. And so Joseph set off. And as he walked through the countryside, getting close to the brothers, they could see him coming. Payback time, they thought. They discussed about killing him. But one of the brothers, Reuben, said, "No, let's not kill him. Let's throw him in this well." And so the brothers decided to do that. So when he got there, they grabbed him, ripped his coat off, threw him in the well, and shouted insults at him. I'm sure they called him all kinds of names. Now, Reuben's plan was to lift him out of the well later when the brothers weren't looking so that he could escape and go home. But a couple of hours later, Joseph was in the well, Reuben was in another part of the countryside with some sheep, and some traders came along on their way to Egypt. So the brothers decided, let's sell him as a slave. Then we can have some money and we'll never have to see him again and we wouldn't have to kill him. And so that's what they did. They sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. They took his coat, dipped it in animal blood, and went back to Jacob and told him that a wild animal had killed Joseph. All they found was his coat with blood on it. Jacob was devastated. He was really upset. And he cried and cried for many days. Meanwhile, Joseph had been taken to Egypt and sold as a slave to a chief of police. And the chief of police, funny name, called Potiphar, put him in charge of the house where he had to look after everything and manage it, make sure the jobs were done. And everything went really well for a while, but then Joseph was accused of doing something that he hadn't done, and he was put in prison. Have you ever been accused of doing something that you haven't done, perhaps at home or at school? It's not very nice, is it? Well, it was really bad for Joseph because he was innocent, he'd done nothing wrong, but he was put in prison. And he was in prison for 12 years. And different things happened, which we haven't got time to explain. But at the end of 12 years, this happened. Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, had 2 dreams that his wise men and magicians couldn't interpret. They didn't know what the dreams meant. And there was a man who was Pharaoh's cupbearer, remembered Joseph because he'd been in prison with Joseph, and him and the baker had had dreams that Joseph had interpreted and told them the meaning, and what he said was the meaning actually happened. And so Pharaoh decided to bring Joseph out of prison. Now he had to be bathed and changed and had all his hair shaved off, because that's what you did when you went to see Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said, I've been told that you can interpret dreams. Joseph said, only God can interpret dreams, but he may help me to interpret them. So Pharaoh told Joseph the dreams, which were this. The first one, 7 fat, healthy cows came out of the river Nile, followed by 7 skinny, unhealthy cows. And the 7 skinny cows ate the fat ones. In his second dream, there were 7 healthy sheaves of wheat, and then 7 scrawny, weak wheat. And the 7 scrawny wheat ate the 7 good wheat. Joseph said, the meaning of your dreams are that there is going to be 7 years of good farm crops, excellent crops, and then there's going to be 7 years of really bad crops, like a famine. So I suggest, sir, that you put someone you can trust in charge of managing the years of good harvest and save food ready for the bad harvest. And so Pharaoh decided to do that, and he put Joseph in charge of giving out the grain. Joseph became like a prime minister. Can you see how God was with Joseph through his life? And through the times of suffering, God was with him and brought him out of prison into this high position in the government. Anyway, there was a famine all over the world. People came from many countries to buy grain from Joseph, because Egypt was a rich country with all the grain that had been saved up in the good years of harvest. This made Joseph very powerful and Pharaoh very rich. One day, guess who came? Yeah, his brothers came. They were dying of hunger from lack of food. And they didn't recognise Joseph because it had been 20 years since they'd last seen him when they sold him as a slave. And he looked different. He didn't look like a Hebrew. He had Egyptian clothes on. His head was bald, shaved. But Joseph recognised them. It was just the right moment for Joseph to get his own back. But Joseph had learned a lot while he'd been in Egypt. He knew that God was a forgiving God. He could see that his brothers were sorry and that they'd changed. And he'd learned that by getting your own back, it only ends up in hurting people. Joseph told his brothers who he was. They were terrified because he was so powerful, and they thought he could have them killed or put in prison, and no one could do anything about it. But instead of punishing his brothers, Joseph said, I forgive you. You wanted to kill me, but God made it all turn out well. He sent me here to save people's lives. And there was a lot of hugging and celebrating at this amazing reunion. And Joseph told his brothers to go back to Canaan and bring their families back to live in Egypt where there's plenty of food. And that's what they did. When Jacob heard that Joseph was alive, he could hardly believe it. And the whole family did move to Egypt, where they had plenty of food for the rest of their lives. And I hope you can see God's hand on Joseph's life all the way through. And always remember, when we're going through difficult times and hard times, God is with us. He wants to help us through those times and use those times to make us stronger. And remember, God always has a purpose for you and me, like he did for Joseph. Now, I've got a little quiz here. If you'd like to stop the recording, go and get some pencil and paper. I've got 14 questions. You can either answer them on your own or in teams. And I'll pause a little bit after each question, but if you need more time, just press the pause button on your computer. Question 1. How many sons did Jacob have? Include Joseph in that. How many sons did he have? What did Jacob give to Joseph? That's number 2. What gift did he give him? Number 3. How did Joseph's brothers feel when Jacob gave him the gift? Number 4. Tell me one dream. Something about each dream. What was each dream? One of them that Joseph told his brothers. Number 5. How old was Joseph when he went to the countryside to visit his brothers? 6. What did the brothers do to him? And 7. What did Jacob think had happened to him? Number 8. Which country was Joseph sold into as a slave? And number 9. How many years was Joseph in prison for? It's quite a hard one. I did mention it once. Number 10. Name one of Pharaoh's dreams. There was 2. Name one of them. What was it about? 11. What did the dreams mean? They meant the same. What was the meaning? 12. What job did Pharaoh give to Joseph? What job did Pharaoh give to Joseph? Number 13. When Joseph told his brothers who he was, what did they think he might do? And number 14, what did Joseph do? Okay, here's the answers. Jacob had 12 sons. Number 2, a coat, a long coat with colours or coat. That's enough for a point. 3, how did Joseph's brothers feel? You could say angry, jealous, wanting to get their own back. Either of those things. One of the dreams. What was one of the dreams that Joseph had? Do you remember that his brothers' 11 sheaves of corn would bow down to his, sun, moon and stars bowing down to him? Put bowing corn or bowing stars, something like that for a point. How old was Joseph when he went to the countryside to see his brothers? 17. What did the brothers do to him? So either say, put him in a well or sold him as a slave. Either of those, you get a point. Where was he sold as a slave? What country? Egypt. Number 9. How many years was he in prison for? It was 12. Name one of Pharaoh's dreams. Do you remember the fat cows and thin cows? or good corn and bad corn, something like that. What did the dreams mean? That's number 11. They're going to say good harvest, bad harvest, or 7 years of good, 7 famine, something like that. 12. What job did Pharaoh give to Joseph? You can either say prime minister or in charge of the food, something like that. 13. When Joseph told his brothers who he was, what did they think he would do? The answer is they thought he might kill them or put them in prison. And number 14, what did Joseph do? He forgave them, didn't he? So I hope you've liked this month's story and that you've enjoyed listening to it. And remember, God has a plan for you as he did for Joseph, and he's always with us no matter what we're going through. Bye.